Årets festforelæser er en af de forskere, som mange kollegaer vil pege på, hvis man skal sige, hvis vi skal sige, hvordan man skal bedrive problemdrevet, tværfaglig forskning på internationalt niveau og med konkret samfundsengagement og effekt. Og tværfaglig på den svære måde mellem naturvidenskab og samfundsvidenskab. Første gang jeg hørte om Christian Syberg var i 2014, hvor jeg som ny prorektor blev introduceret for det strategiske satsningsområde Miljørisiko, Environmental Risk. Her havde RUC og Christians Institut valgt at bruge strategimidler på at medfinansiere ansættelsen af en lille gruppe af lovende unge forskere, der arbejdede med miljørisici. En af de lovende unge forskere var Christian Syberg. Miljørisiko er et tværfagligt forskningsfelt, som omfatter undersøgelse af konkrete risici. Det kan være pesticider eller plastik eller andet, men også spørgsmål om, hvordan vi som samfund håndterer risici, som i yderste konsekvens kan udgøre eksistenstrusler. Christian har en Ph.D. i økotoksikologi. Det er studiet af virkningen af giftige kemikalier på levende organismer. Og han er i dag lektor i miljørisiko. Hans forskning fokuserer på plastikforurening, og det vil han helt sikkert fortælle mere om et øjeblik. Det unikke ved Christians forskning er, at han ikke bare fokuserer på at forstå plastikforurening som et økotoksikologisk problem. Forskningen handler også om at forstå, hvordan plastik er blevet den her helt centrale miljøudfordring. Og det handler ikke bare om at beskrive det her problem, men også hvad man kan gøre for at gøre noget ved det på alle niveauer i samfundet. Og ikke bare beskrive det og gøre noget ved det, som om det bare var et ekspertproblem eller et politisk problem, men at forholde sig til det som noget, der omfatter os alle sammen. Os alle sammen som kompetente borgere, der også kan bidrage til at afdække problemet og afklare sammen, hvad vi kan gøre ved det, hvad vi kan gøre ved plastikforurening. Christian er leder af Miljødynamik, som er en af Institut for Naturvidenskab og Miljøs 4 faggrupper. Han har dannet sin egen forskningsgruppe, som hedder Roskilde Plastic Society. Han var initiativtager til og er med til at lede et nationalt Velux forskningscenter for marin plastik. Han har også bidraget til forskellige tværgående initiativer her på universitetet og meget mere. Og så er han, hvis man spørger rundt, en rigtig god kollega. Nu skal jeg ikke sige mere. Nu tager Christian heldigvis over. Værsgo. Der.
Tak, Peter. Thank you very much. So, I've been asked to give this speech in English, but I'm not from Falster, just so you know. Thank you very much for the introduction, Peter. It is obviously an honor and a privilege for me to stand here and talk today. And my title of my presentation is Addressing the Triple Planetary Crisis from an Interdisciplinary Perspective, the Case of Plastic Pollution. And I will also say one thing. I did not coordinate anything with Hanne, but all the things you said, I'll follow up on them right now. But trust me on that. Okay. Before I start, I would like to come with a disclaimer. So I know this is a day of celebration. This is a day where we have our annual party. This is me sailing on the Pacific Ocean on one of my expeditions to sample plastics. And I could tell stories about how we were sailing out there, losing engine power in the Bermuda Triangle, or how we were struggling with the waves in the storms outside Hawaii when our rudder broke. That might be more entertaining than what I'm going to talk about. But the triple planetary crisis is simply too important not to talk about. So today, I'm not a courier of happy news. I'm not traveling in feel-good stories, and this is not me today. The triple planetary crisis is defined by UN, and I see this as a call from UN to the entire world that if we do not address these problems, then everything else is probably in vain. And they are defined as climate change, loss of biodiversity, and finally pollution. These are the 3 major environmental challenges that we face in order to sustain a living environment for ourselves and also for all the other species on this planet here. One of the biggest problems with addressing the triple planetary crisis is what we can call, it is an intertwined wicked problem. And in this case here, a wicked problem is a problem that lacks clear solutions, and wherever possible solutions are, they can lead to either further complex problems. And this is obviously really, really difficult to deal with. So in order to deal with a wicked problem as the triple planetary crisis, we must think out of the box. We must work across traditional silos, and we must work across different disciplines, so in an interdisciplinary manner. Part of the work that I'm doing right now is partaking in negotiations at the UN level about a new plastic treaty to end plastic pollution on the global level. And I'm participating with that with a lot of good colleagues from all over the world. One of my good friends and colleagues, he sent me a graffiti that I want to show here because I think it's really hits the point here. Fuck normal, I want magic. This is what we need, right? If we continue to work on normal or work towards new normal, we will not reach the target. We have to think out of the box. We have to move beyond. And we, as researchers and students at universities, this is what we do. We move beyond normal. Maybe we cannot reach magic. That's maybe a little bit too bold, but I think we can move beyond magic, and I think this is our task. So the question today here is RUC to step up to this challenge posed by the UN? I looked at the RUC website to see what do we say about ourselves. And this is taken from our website. So we think ahead, we shape the future. And we do that by employing interdisciplinary approach because no major problems are ever resolved on the basis of single academic disciplines alone. So I think working with the triple planetary crisis from an interdisciplinary perspective is right down our alley. So with another graffiti, this one I have no personal attachment to. This was just something I grabbed from the internet. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Okay, now I'll tell a little bit about my research area, the plastic pollution, and why this is a good case in this matter here. So this is obviously plastic pollution, as you have seen. And if we look into climate change, so plastic is, for the far majority of plastic, made by fossil fuel. So we will collect that and incinerate that. We burn oil, adding to the climate change. It also has massive impact on biodiversity all over the globe. Just for oceans alone, plastic pollution has a documented impact on more than 1,600 different species. And finally, it adds to pollution. So in 1950, there was no plastic pollution at all on the globe. Today, if you go to the deepest trenches of the ocean, to the highest tops of the mountain, to the North Pole, the South Pole, and everywhere in between, we find plastic pollution. So it is omnipresent on the planet today. Our work, as Peter was so nice to mention us, we have formed this group called Roskilde Environmental Plastic Society, or just REPS for short. This is a group that we have formed across different groups at RUC, and it is a group that's open for everyone. So we invite first semester students to professors to come, and if you want to come by, Hanne, you're also more than welcome. We have monthly meetings, and the only thing that binds us together is that we're all interested in working with plastic pollution. So this is an invitation. I will talk about two cases where I illustrate some of the work that we do in REPS. The first case is what we call the MASS experiment. So this was a large citizen science project that we conducted in 2019, where we invited school children across the nation to participate in collecting plastic litter. More than 57,000 students participated, and they, over 2 weeks, collected plastic litter at more than 3,500 sites across Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And it was the first ever national mapping of plastic pollution in the world. So this was obviously also just from a pure monitoring perspective, it was really interesting. But what I really liked about this project was that it requires a really interdisciplinary approach. So we draw upon many, many different disciplines in designing and also disseminating this. So disciplines as monitoring, teaching, pollution, communication, and regulation, all these different kinds of approaches were brought into this project here. And I have been talking with a lot of journalists over the years, disseminate in many ways, but I can say that disseminating this project was the most intense thing I've ever been involved in. And then what does it matter to make such a project here? So this is a graph from the scientific paper that we made, and what it shows is the 22 different categories that we collected plastic litter in. And I will highlight the biggest bar, so that was the most abundant type of plastic litter we found in the Danish environment, and that is cigarette filters, so cigarette butts that people smoke and throw in the environment. And we disseminated that, and that was all over the news. And what happened not too long after was that the environmental ministry in Denmark, they made a campaign in order to stop littering. This is the former environmental minister, Lea Wermelin, that is presenting this campaign. Another finding from our studies was that drinking bottles, so plastic bottles, were not very abundant in Denmark. What we did after we had collected all the data was also to compare with other campaigns across Europe and look into different regulatory aspects. And if we look across Europe, plastic bottles is a top 5 litter item, sometimes even a top 3. In Denmark, it was very low on the list. And one of the things we discussed is that in Denmark, we have this very efficient deposit system, so pantsystemet. So putting a value to the plastic products when they enter the reach of life, when we're done using it, actually prevent it from being littered. We discussed that as well and disseminated that. And not long after, the pant system, the Danish pant system, was expanded to also include, for example, these juice bottles. I will not claim that these initiatives were done based on our studies. I think that would be arrogant because there are so many things. I am fully aware of how much effort that goes into making new type of regulation. But maybe, just maybe, we had a little bit of inspiration along the way. The second case I'm going to tell you about is what's called transition to a circular economy. So very shortly, this is a massive field of research across the planet. Very, very quickly, it says that one of the major issues we have today with the consumption of materials is that we only use them once. So we take them from the environment, we make products out of them, we use the products, and we throw them away. And this is one of the biggest problems because it leads to the overconsumption that we have today. So we have to move into something that is more circular, where we reuse products, we make them for longer, for higher longevity, we collect them better for better recycling, all these things. This is a research field that we work with and a lot of people work with. But one of the things that was interesting for me is when I go down to the UN and discuss with colleagues and policymakers about the new plastic treaty, discussions about how circular economy can play a role in this new international treaty, it's often very generic, so it's theoretical discussions about this can be done. But one of the things that we work with here is also to have a link to reality. Otherwise, it won't really matter. If it's only on paper, then it won't really matter. So my second example here will be on how we work with reality and link it all the way up to policy. So we have projects, a big project where we work with research, reduce plastic consumptions in the hospitals. And the reason why we work with the hospitals in this area is that 25% of all the waste that we have in hospitals is plastic. And a far majority of it is as shown in these pictures that Tiffany, who is sitting up there, took when she worked at Slagelse and Næstved Hospital, these type of single-use products here. So the product that we did was how can we reduce the consumption of these plastic products here in order to minimize the climate impact and other impacts of plastics from the hospitals. In order to do this in a way so it works in reality, we use what we call a mixed method strategy, where first Tiffany went in and interviewed the staff at the hospital, talking with them about how they actually use the product, why do you use this product, what is the daily routines, in order to understand the application of these. Then secondly, she conducted a mass flow analysis where she quantified the amount of plastic for these different products that we found interesting across the hospital in order to see what is actually interesting, where if we reduce in one area, will it actually have an impact. And she also brought these samples back home to our lab over in Building 12, where she did polymer analysis in order to understand the chemical composition of these products as well. So this interdisciplinary mixed method, then she finally went back and did another round of interviews with the staff and said, now we have understand what is the flow of plastic, what is the type of products, how can we work with actually reducing that. So that's reducing things in reality, reducing plastic impact in reality. This was done at Slagelse Sygehus. It was done with our great collaborators in Region Zealand, and we are very happy to be part of this really good collaboration here with the region. What happened afterwards, because I think I could, without bragging, say that this was a successful partnership. We have now been able, through our big national partnership for circularity called TRACE, we have been able to scale this to a national level. We're working with 3 different regions now in order to minimize plastic consumption, not just here in the region, but at hospitals throughout the country. And these experience from specific work in the hospitals, I'm bringing them into the discussion in the UN Treaty to also discuss how things can be done in reality and not just on paper. Okay. So for me, this illustrates how we like to work. So we like to apply this interdisciplinary approach to solve real-life problems. And secondly, it also illustrates how we're able to link these real-life solutions to global challenges as the triple planetary crisis. And the reason why I talk about this today is not just to talk about us, but it's also, as Hanne mentioned, this type of interdisciplinary research is conducted all over the university and with relevance to the triple planetary crisis. So, my final question here is addressing the triple planetary crisis not the task that should unite us at all? It is, from my perspective, the biggest societal challenge that we face today. It requires clever minds that think out of the box. And it absolutely needs interdisciplinary collaboration. If these components to solving a problem is not RUC DNA, then I don't know what RUC DNA is. With that, I would like to thank you all, and I wish you all a fantastic annual party. And I will just end with these 2 graffitis that I think sums it all up. Thank you very much.